I didn't know how, and I was also afraid of men.
Really?
Oh yeah, I was afraid of men, yes.
Diane Keaton, the Oscar-winning actress, has died. She first became widely known in 1972 with a memorable role in The Godfather.
It was an abortion, Michael. It was a son, and I had it killed because this.
And later cemented her standing in cinema through her collaboration with Woody Allen and Annie Hall.
Hi.
A performance that earned her the Academy Award for Best Actress. Reports indicate she died at her home in California. Keaton is survived by her 2 children. She was 79. She made eccentricity feel deliberate, turning suits and fedoras into her signature, converting awkwardness into reserve and strength. Diane Keaton didn't simply break molds. She acted as if they never applied. Beneath the trademark laugh and oversized glasses was a woman of deeper complexity. She spoke openly later in life about struggles with alcohol and an eating disorder, loved intensely yet was not always chosen in return, stood by Woody Allen through controversy, and adopted 2 children after the age of 50 while rejecting the title of wife. Why did she never marry? Why did she form deep attachments to figures like Al Pacino and Woody Allen without taking the aisle? How did she become an emblem of culture by refusing the usual Hollywood script? This is not merely the tale of a woman who stayed single, it's the portrait of someone who redefined living on her own terms, the real reason Diane Keaton never needed a wedding to define her life. She was born Diane Hall on January 5, 1946, in Los Angeles, California, raised in a conservative Catholic household. Her father worked as a civil engineer and real estate broker, while her mother, Dorothy, kept the home and privately harbored artistic ambitions that were never fully realized. Dorothy once won a local Mrs. Los Angeles homemaking contest, a brief, dazzling coronation judged on domestic skill. To young Diane, it was both thrilling and unnerving. She remembered her mother on stage, radiant and applauded for a perfect cake in a spotless home. But the applause lasted only minutes. When the lights faded, Dorothy returned to the kitchen, to her husband, to a life that had sidelined theater and literature. Diane later said she felt proud and frightened. Her mother might have been a writer or an artist, but she set those dreams aside. That instilled in Diane a fear that becoming the ideal woman meant vanishing, that keeping a family intact would cost one's voice. So she vowed not to disappear, not to cede herself simply to preserve a family. If preserving her ambitions required defying the expectations of womanhood, she was willing to pay that cost. Her artistic life did not begin under the name The World Knows. Born Diane Hall, she moved to Manhattan after studying at Orange Coast College to pursue acting. When she tried to register with Actors Equity, she found another Diane Hall already listed. She adopted her mother's maiden name, Keaton, as an asserted identity. "I will be the one they remember," her choice seemed to declare. Standing around 5'7", with expressive brown eyes and a distinctly offbeat charm, she stood apart. In 1968, amid the upheaval of hippie culture, anti-war protests, and demands for personal freedom, she won her first Broadway role in the musical Hair. The production became notorious for an Act I finale featuring full-cast nudity. Keaton declined to strip, even turning down extra pay. That small act of refusal spoke loudly. She would perform, but not simply conform. That same year, she met Woody Allen. Their chemistry was immediate on creative and emotional levels. They dated briefly, but their connection endured well beyond a romantic chapter. In 1977, she starred in Annie Hall, a role Allen wrote with her in mind. It was less a part than a mirror. Quirks, wardrobe, and cadence all echoed Diane. The film won her an Academy Award and made her a household name.
I just would like to say thanks to Woody and thank you. Thank you very much.
Yet fame did not erase private turmoil. Keaton later battled bulimia in secret for years, consuming entire pies, loaves of bread, or buckets of fried food, and then purging alone, a cycle of shame and control. She also drank heavily at times. In interviews, she referenced periods when drinking was an escape. And then there were the men, Warren Beatty, Al Pacino, Woody Allen. She loved earnestly but was not ultimately chosen by some of them. She never married or wore a white dress down an aisle. "I didn't want to give up my independence," she said. "I didn't want to become someone else's version of me." Instead, she constructed a life on her own terms. At 50, she adopted her first child, then another, becoming a single mother without a ready blueprint and without apology. Hollywood often didn't know how to read her. She wasn't shaped by conventional seduction, nor did she chase youth or sleek perfection. She favored loose suits, oversized glasses, tangential conversation, and a laugh that could fill a room. Those traits became her strength. She turned oddness magnetic, awkwardness into armor, and difference into destiny. She defended friends and collaborators when others distanced themselves, a loyalty rooted less in blind agreement than in an emphasis on nuance and complexity. Through it all, she kept working. Baby Boom, Father of the Bride, Something's Gotta Give, films that foregrounded women who are resilient, funny, and flawed. She became a symbol not of loud rebellion, but of steady resistance, choosing herself when the culture urged otherwise. Not every demand could be shrugged off. At 19, she says she was asked to drop nearly 10 pounds to keep a role, a routine demand in theater that left a lasting mark. That early pressure launched a 5-year struggle with bulimia. Like many young women, she punished her body to match an external image. The stage demanded a shape she paid in pain. What she didn't know then was that in the audience that night sat a man who would transform her life and career, Woody Allen. After Hair, she auditioned for Allen's Play It Again, Sam. The female lead was the quick-witted romantic foil to Allen's neurotic protagonist, someone who could make awkwardness luminous. Keaton fit the part, though producers fretted she was 2 inches taller than Allen. She walked into the room, spoke, and dissolved the doubt. She won the role and earned a Tony nomination for Best Featured Actress. Rehearsals led to dinners, and their relationship moved from professional to personal. What followed was a creative partnership spanning decades. They were not a customary Hollywood couple. Keaton didn't perform seduction. She simply was herself, and Allen recognized that she was not a typical star but something else entirely. Soon after, she appeared on film in Lovers and Other Strangers, 1970. Then came the casting that changed everything. Francis Ford Coppola selected her as Kay Adams in The Godfather, 1972. Though not yet a familiar face, Coppola saw in her a gentleness that was not naivete, a reserve that nonetheless drew the viewer in. With only a few scenes in one of cinema's most defining films, Keaton, the eccentric Broadway presence, stepped firmly into Hollywood. Her early career resisted predictability. She did not chase approval or mold herself to fit taste. That offbeat quality drew major directors. While casting The Godfather, Coppola noticed something others had missed: vulnerability wrapped in a quiet center, a femininity that didn't demand attention but still held its own. Despite skepticism and the risk of casting a relatively unknown actress, Coppola invited her to play Kay. The choice proved prescient. The film immortalized actors like Marlon Brando, Al Pacino, and Robert Duvall, and quietly introduced Diane Keaton as an essential presence in a masculine world. The Godfather's success was immediate. The Godfather Part 2, 1974, deepened Kay's role. She returned to a woman promised a life outside crime who instead found herself contained by Michael Corleone's shadow. There were no dramatic shootouts or monologues for Kay, but every entrance delivered the human cost of power. One unforgettable moment is Kay's confession that she had an abortion, not for health reasons, but because she refused to bring another child into Michael's world. The revelation severed their bond. The final image of Michael quietly shutting a door on her remains, one of cinema's most haunting frames. No gunfire, no shouting, only a glance and a closing door. In that silence, Keaton became the emotional heartbeat of a tragedy. The Godfather Part 2 was lauded and crowned with awards, including multiple Academy Awards and critical accolades, and its box office returns far outpaced its modest budget for the era. Keaton never set out to be a feminist icon, yet by insisting on a different presence in the frame, calm, intimate, unembellished, she left an imprint. Though Part 3 would later receive a cooler reception, excising Kay would have been a mistake. She remained the moral counterpoint, a reminder of what cruelty and power demand. If The Godfather is an American tragedy of betrayal and ambition, Diane Keaton across those films provided its moral anchor. If The Godfather launched her, Annie Hall made her name legend. The movie began life as a sprawling experiment titled Anhedonia, at one point running about 150 minutes and filled with tangents and cutscenes. Through rigorous editing, Woody Allen honed the narrative into a taut 93-minute film focused on Alvy and Annie's relationship. Production stretched nearly 10 months, with entire sequences revised or removed to preserve rhythm. Scenes like the philosophical basketball game were left on the cutting room floor to sharpen clarity. Annie Hall stands as a clear example of how editing can turn fragments into a masterpiece. The film won 4 major Academy Awards, including Best Actress for Keaton, plus BAFTAs and Golden Globes, and critics praised its innovation. Yet perhaps Annie Hall's most lasting cultural effect arrived via costume. Keaton didn't simply wear what costume notes requested. She brought pieces from her own closet: oversized shirts, slouchy trousers, layered vests, fedoras, and loose ties. Allen initially balked, but ultimately ceded control. Some garments were Ralph Lauren, but the sensibility was Keaton's. The film's look crossed over into mainstream style and reimagined casual femininity. Keaton's career kept expanding. She directed Unstrung Heroes 1995, which received generally positive notices, showing she could guide a film with a gentle, precise touch. She spent off hours photographing streets, interiors, and domestic details, seeing ordinary life with the particular eye of someone who treasured quiet beauty. She lived in a way that felt intentional, loving fiercely, parenting independently, aging without contrivance, standing by collaborators, and never apologizing for being herself. Her life suggests a lesson. You don't need a wedding to be whole, a marquee to feel seen, or a sanctioned role to know your worth. What you need is courage and conviction, and perhaps a distinctive hat. Diane Keaton left not only a catalog of films, but also a blueprint for authenticity. Difference is not a defect, but a gift, and sometimes the most resonant influence comes from a voice that speaks softly but refuses to be muted. Thank you, Diane, for the laughter, the blunt honesty, and the hats. You did more than act. You inspired. That beyond trophies is the mark of an icon. If this story moved you or raised questions, please like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell for more deep dives into the lives behind the spotlight. Share your thoughts in the comments below.